March 16th, 1943. Nazi U-boat U-653 limps back to base after a month of combat on the North Atlantic. The submarine is having engine troubles. The bridge watchman sees a brief spark and a red glow against the darkness.
Find contact!
A sailor on deck lighting his cigarette has revealed the presence of an Allied ship. Lookouts scan the surrounding seas and find themselves surrounded by the ghostly shadows of dozens more.
Wir sind mitten im Konvoi.
U-653 has somehow managed to sail into the midst of an Allied convoy. It is a lucky accident that sets the stage for the largest convoy battle of the Second World War. In World War II, a subsea weapon allows warriors to fight from beneath the waves. With cunning, force, and tenacity, their enemies strike back. Revolutionary, but still sometimes primitive, it's a desperate bid to change the course of war. Their stories are legend. After blundering into the middle of an Allied convoy, Captain Lieutenant Gerhard Feiler orders a crash dive to escape detection.
Wie geht's euch allen?
Safely submerged, U-653 tracks the vessels that pass overhead.
Stromgeräusch über uns.
Hours later, Feiler resurfaces just behind the columns of ships to send a convoy sighting signal to U-boat headquarters. Within an hour, 28 U-boats home in on U-653 to form one of the largest Wolfpack forces ever. The destruction inflicted by Nazi U-boats over the next 3 days will bring them to the brink of victory in the Battle of the Atlantic. March 15th, 1943. Allied convoy HX.229 plows through stormy seas on a north-northeasterly course. The merchant ships are escorted by warships for protection. More than 3 years into the war, most of the goods and raw materials required by the war effort travel in convoys from North America to Britain.
The great benefit of putting ships in convoys is you make the rest of the sea empty, and then you concentrate your defenses around the only target that matters, so the submariners have to fight their way in.
All convoys are given names for identification. HX originally indicated a departure from Halifax. 229 means that 228 convoys left before it. HX.229 gradually advances on another convoy, a slow convoy, SC.122, which left from New York. Together, they contain nearly 100 merchant ships. Lieutenant Commander Gordon John Luther leads the escort group protecting HX.229 as it crosses 2,500 miles of ocean. With just 5 warships to protect 40 ships, the escort group has limited capability.
He hasn't got the assets to give the convoy anything like the degree of protection it needs.
It is Lieutenant Commander Luther's second transatlantic escort. His first was without incident. This time, he won't be so lucky. Nazi naval intelligence is expecting him.
When these 2 convoys were leaving North America, the German B-Dienst, the German intelligence department, was able to read the Allied convoy signals And this, of course, gave the opportunity to send out the U-boats to find and to fight that convoy.
For Gross Admiral Karl Dönitz, cutting off Allied shipping to Britain is the key to winning the war.
It's often said that Dönitz wanted 300 submarines to go to war against Great Britain. And in January of 1943, he's got 300 submarines.
The big difference by 1943 is that the production has come on stream, and now there are very large numbers of U-boats. Dönitz can deploy 50 or more in several packs against individual convoys. And so the U-boats have never been stronger.
Dönitz thinks he now has the U-boat fleet to knock Britain out of the war. By early 1943, nearly 11 million tons of raw materials, supplies and food has been sunk in the Atlantic. Britain is reaching a tipping point.
Something like 22% of all the shipping that sailed from the 1st of March to the 21st of March fails to make it to the other side. It is absolutely the low point of the war. It's nearly catastrophic.
However, for Dönitz, the challenge remains locating Allied ships. His crews practice the Wolfpack tactic. A Wolfpack is a group of submarines lined up across a known convoy route, so the ships pass in between and are detected. If a convoy is sighted, a locating signal message is sent to U-boat headquarters. Nearby submarines are ordered to converge and prepare for attack.
The only chance to fight a convoy with U-boats would be the simultaneous attack of a number of U-boats, just to keep the escorts busy and so giving other boats the chance to actually torpedo the merchant vessels.
Dönitz positions a Wolfpack, Gruppe Raubgraf, northeast of Newfoundland.
So at this time, Dönitz got the information of a very large convoy moving from west to east with supplies for the Allied forces. And he put his submarine battle groups en route to intercept this convoy.
But a different Allied convoy gets attacked by Raubgraf first and gives away the Wolfpack's position. The Allies immediately change course for both convoys, HX.229 and SC.122. With the help of stormy weather, they squeak past the south end of the Raubgraf Wolfpack. They are safe for now. But German intelligence also intercepts the Admiralty's rerouting signal.
Like a chess player, Dönitz then moved his boats like you move your chess figures and tried to gather as many U-boats as possible for attack on convoys.
Dönitz activates two more Wolfpacks, Gruppe Stürmer and Dränger, to locate and destroy the merchant ships. Still 5 days from its destination in Liverpool, Lieutenant Commander Luther's convoy approaches the most dangerous part of its journey, what some call the Devil's Gorge.
The Germans would tend to concentrate their wolf packs in this area in mid-Atlantic. And by early 1943, there are a lot of U-boats.
Important protection to Allied shipping comes from air coverage. Long-range aircraft equipped with radar and armed with depth charges drive U-boats underwater to deter attacks against merchant shipping. But far out in the Atlantic is an expanse of ocean beyond the range of air support. The Allies call it the air gap.
There is a gap in the middle of the Atlantic which cannot be covered by aircraft flying from Canada or Iceland or flying from Northern Ireland. Given the range of most of the aircraft, essentially, therefore, sensibly, the U-boats concentrate on that area where the threat to them is least.
It takes 2 or 3 days for ships to pass through the air gap. Without aerial coverage and only 5 warships to protect convoy HX.229, Luther steams ahead unprepared for what Dönitz has in store.
Somewhere along that stretch between the Grand Banks of Newfoundland and the approaches to Ireland, they're going to find you.
U-boats from Gruppe Raubgraf continue to search for the convoy, battered by a winter storm.
You have a wind blowing with up to 60, 70 miles per hour, sometimes into the face of the crews, temperatures a little bit above 0 centigrade, and you have the water spilling over the open bridge. They have to be there on the conning tower with their binoculars and spotting into the 3 directions to get any possible contact.
Finding ships is not easy at the best of times.
It was really hard for a submarine to spot an Allied convoy, still like the search for a needle in a haystack.
After operating with Gruppe Raubgraf for a month, U-653's starboard engine is failing. Low on diesel, Kapitän Leutnant Gerhard Feiler must rendezvous with a fuel tanker before returning to base for repairs. Despite their dwindling capacity to attack, the lookouts remain posted. As they hobble away,
Feind Kontakt!
the bridge watch makes a startling discovery.
Visibility is very poor. But unfortunately, in one of the ships, somebody lights a cigarette, and this shows through the mist, and it tells the submarine that, oh, there's a target over there.
U-653 has cruised right into the middle of an Allied convoy. Feiler does not have the torpedoes to attack, but he commands the most powerful U-boat in the Atlantic.
Wir sind mitten im Konvoi.
He must keep the convoy within reach without being discovered.
Volle Kraft voraus!
Feiler orders a crash dive to preserve their invisibility. Non-essential crew rush forward to get the bow down fast.
Wie geht's euch allen?
They listen, discerning different ships of the convoy that pass overhead.
Stromgeräusche über uns.
Then use the sounds of the propellers to track them without revealing the sub. Hours later, Feiler surfaces behind the columns of merchant ships and their escorts, still undetected. The radio operator issues a coded sighting report to U-boat headquarters. 3 letters in Morse code.
If one submarine in the operational area is in contact with the enemy, it reports the position, so they could plot an interception course to make a coordinated night attack when there are enough submarines.
The Wolfpack is predicated entirely on the free use of the radio. There's no other way to do it.
Karl Dönitz is the mastermind.
He controls them on a high-frequency radio link lead, so he can move the pack around, up, down, left, right, forward, backwards, based on the intelligence.
The sighting report thrills Dönitz. He now has a precise target. The rest of Gruppe Raubgraf is just 80 miles away. Dönitz orders them to proceed at top speed towards the convoy. U-653 continues to transmit location updates as it shadows the convoy. 11 U-boats from the Stürmer and Dränger Wolfpacks also set course from the east. By nightfall, 38 U-boats advance on the lightly defended ships.
One of the largest numbers of U-boats was gathered for attack on those convoys.
Very low on diesel, Feiler is released to refuel and return to port. But now U-615 and 3 other U-boats stalk convoy HX.229 and the thousands of tons of Allied shipping it protects. They send the short-coded signal to update their location every 2 hours. The information is relayed to other U-boats to update their bearings. The Wolfpack gathers, but they need more U-boats to launch a full attack. They follow Luther's convoy into the air gap.
The largest number of sinkings in the greatest area of operations is the North Atlantic air gap, because that's the place by the end of 42 and early 43. Then he could use submarines with impunity.
The U-boat commanders know they only have 2 or 3 days to execute their assault before Allied air coverage arrives to drive them off. U-boats have been trailing convoy HX.229 and relaying coordinates by wireless to allow neighboring Wolfpacks to close in. But radio operators at U-boat headquarters aren't the only ones listening. The Allies also intercept the messages via stations along the coasts. While details of the signal reports cannot be decoded by Allied naval intelligence, the transmissions provide critical information.
Even if you can't read the codes of what the submarines are saying, you can tell it's a submarine by what's called DFing, direction finding.
The Allies intercept signals using 2 or more shore stations, equipped with high-frequency direction-finding technology. Then, with basic triangulation, the Allies can determine the approximate location of the U-boat.
Any radio message could be picked up, could be triangulated, and you knew there was a submarine there. So the Operational Intelligence Center could keep a pretty good tab on where German submarines were.
The Admiralty relays the calculations to Luther aboard HMS Volunteer.
Lieutenant Commander Luther is in a terrible situation. He knows from his intelligence reports that he's surrounded by a huge number of U-boats. He only has 3 of his own ships plus a destroyer. But he knows it's totally inadequate for the scale of the attack that is coming.
Luther's situation is bleak. German U-boats often wait to exploit the cover of darkness, and the sun has begun to set.
The attack usually comes at night, out of the dark, with the submarine slightly awash, so that only the conning tower is really showing above. And you come in at full speed, and it's basically being attacked by motor torpedo boats on the high seas.
Expecting an attack from the north, Luther positions his ship, HMS Volunteer, on the port column of the merchant ships. He orders the other escorts to adopt defensive positions around the convoy. Seven Nazi U-boats already draw near.
Dönitz on occasion would actually hold off till he's got 6, 8, in some cases 15 or 20 assembled around the convoy, and then the order would be given that at the right moment in the dark of night, you're free to attack.
Aboard U-603,
Auftauchen!
Oberleutnant Zurzi Bertelsmann prepares for surface attack.
Bertelsmann, he manages to get between 2 of the escort vessels. One of them HMS Beverly, an American-built destroyer in Royal Navy service, and one of the corvettes. And he skillfully maneuvers between the escorts so that he can fire his torpedo into the convoy.
While Bertelsmann lines up his shot, Lieutenant Commander Luther orders the convoy to turn south, hoping to evade U-boats detected to the north and west.
You need luck, because even so you are moving into a position which is perfect, as soon as the convoy zigzags away from you, your position is totally wasted, and another submarine, before that being in a stupid position, is all of a sudden in a perfect position.
Luther's detour puts Bertelsmann in a position to attack sooner than anticipated. U-603 and its crew have been at sea for more than a month. They've already sunk 2 ships from another convoy. They only have 4 torpedoes left, but some are armed with new technology called FAT.
The Germans had developed a new pattern-running torpedo known as the FAT. You didn't actually have to penetrate the convoy. You actually could fire a torpedo from outside into the convoy and it would run in a pattern.
A torpedo armed with FAT guidance system makes regular turns and sweeps through until it runs out of fuel or makes a hit.
And it also gave the appearance that the U-boat was inside the convoy even when it was outside.
But it's risky. FAT torpedoes do not discriminate between Allied ships and German U-boats. Both are in danger. Bertelsmann's radio operator sends out a warning to other U-boats that FAT-armed torpedoes are about to be launched.
When the submarine gets the information about one submarine firing the FAT torpedo, they have to leave the area where the torpedo is moving, or they have to get deeper so that the torpedo would pass above them.
Torpedo 2 und 3 laden.
Then orders the crew to fire the 4 remaining torpedoes.
Feuer!
Of course, it was tended to be chance what one of these torpedoes did, and it actually missed 2 ships, but eventually it found its mark.
Loaded with a full cargo of wheat and manganese,
Fertig machen zum Abtauchen.
the LNK suffers a crippling blow. When Luther realizes one of his ships has been struck, he orders what the Navy calls a half raspberry. All escorts turn outwards to sweep their sector, following a triangular route to locate the submarine that has fired the torpedo. Radar is used to detect U-boats on the surface. A type of sonar, called ASDIC, sweeps for submarines below. But Bertelsmann dives without being detected and returns to base. Luther's escorts fail to locate any U-boats as each scans its sector. But during its sweep, HMS Pennyworth discovers the lifeboats of the LNK, the ship sunk by Bertelsmann. Luther's convoy lacks a designated rescue ship. Standard convoy procedure then requires the last merchant ship in the column to recover the survivors. But the sailors from the LNK have been left behind. Now one of Luther's few precious escort ships is occupied with rescue. As midnight approaches, only 3 escorts are positioned to defend the ship's goods and crews of convoy HX.229. More U-boats converge and adopt attack positions. U-758, commanded by Helmut Mansek, has been in contact with the convoy for over 12 hours. He moves in on the unprotected starboard side. He fires 4 torpedoes into the convoy. 2 merchant ships are struck.
Once they get the battle to tumble, it's chaos for the Allies.
Almost simultaneously, another U-boat fires. The effect is devastating. The cargo ship SS Harry Luckenbach is hit.
Submariners are coming in from all directions. Ships are going down hither and yon. Just pure chaos. But managed chaos in a way that works for the Germans.
Then, shortly after midnight, Kapitän Leutnant Siegfried Strelo launches his own attack. The American Liberty ship William Eustis, carrying 7,000 tons of sugar, is struck. Again, the last merchant ship in the column fails to retrieve the lifeboats. With the other escorts already performing rescues, to Luther's dismay, he must now choose.
In an attack like this, where ships are going down, the escort commander is always on the horns of a terrible dilemma. Does he pick up survivors, or does he go after submarines? And it's very, very difficult, particularly in this case when there wasn't a dedicated rescue ship on this convoy. So therefore he's faced with a terrible choice.
Luther does not hesitate for long. He too falls back to rescue survivors. The remaining ships of convoy HX.229 carry on, completely unprotected. Crews hope that the U-boat attacks have ended, but in fact, the carnage has only just begun. However, as the minutes pass, no attack comes. HMS Volunteer is the first escort to retake its position on the perimeter of the convoy. Soon afterwards, HMS Beverly and Mansfield also resumed defensive positions. But the reprieve proves short-lived. Aboard U-600, Kapitän Leutnant Bernhard Zermühlen
Welcher Kurs liegt an?
20 Nordwest.
has followed silently for 4 hours, monitoring the assault. Having completed his U-boat training in September of 1941, Zermühlen would commission and serve as the only commander of U-600.
Beide Maschinen, volle Kraft voraus.
He maneuvers his U-boat ahead of the convoy.
Torpedorohr 1 und 4 laden.
1 und 4, laden.
Then fires a salvo of 5 torpedoes.
Torpedo 1, Feuer.
Torpedo 1, Feuer.
Torpedo 4, Feuer.
Three ships are struck, including the Southern Princess, a tanker carrying 10,000 tons of fuel oil.
The U-boats consistently over time nibble away at the convoy, like U-600, which sinks a tanker, and very satisfactorily for the submarine, not so much for the convoy, it has a typical tanker explosion.
Luther orders 2 escorts to carry out sweeps along the starboard side. His own ship, HMS Volunteer, prowls to the port side. 2 submarines are detected on the surface and driven away.
Luther, he does the best he can. He chases submarines away. But he just hasn't got the assets for the danger into which he's sailing.
Echo bearing green 20, drawing right.
Although escorts detect U-boats with their ASDIC, they hunt without success. But Zermühlen's attack is the last of the night. When dawn comes, the sun rises on a decimated convoy. 447 of 590 sailors have been rescued thanks to the quick response by Luther's men. The Raubgraf U-boats successfully sink 8 merchant ships from HX.229. About 100 miles ahead, slow convoy 122 has also been attacked overnight. One of the first Stürmer Gruppe U-boats makes contact, and 4 more ships are lost.
The first attack by the U-boats of the first pack sinks 12 Allied ships, quite a good ratio.
It's a one-sided fight. Just 2 U-boats are damaged in the battle. A stream of signals arrives at U-boat headquarters, claiming almost 90,000 tons of merchant shipping has been sunk. Eventually, Dönitz realizes that his U-boats have located not 1, but 2 Allied convoys.
In this case, they had a bad operational planning in sending the convoys on the same route, so that they had to pass all through the contested area with German submarines, and it was a mistake they reassessed later on, and they didn't do it a second time.
Dönitz sends a message to the U-boats to continue to press the attack.
Because of this HX convoy in particular suffering the greatest losses of any convoy of the war, there are rumblings in London that perhaps convoy isn't protecting merchant ships. So perhaps an alternative would have to be found. But the trouble is, there isn't one.
During the day that follows, the crisis only worsens for the Allies. Previously well behind, HX.229 is catching up with slow-moving Allied convoy SC.122. Nazi U-boats have trapped nearly 100 sparsely defended merchant ships in just over 100 square miles. Most of the early Raubgraf boats, low on fuel and torpedoes, drop out of the battle. But Stürmer and Dränger boats begin to assert their presence. HX.229 is still well beyond range of most aircraft. If it had not been diverted so far to the south, air support might have been possible. But as of March 17th, the convoy is still far out in the air gap.
Basically, the Admiralty says to the escort group and the convoy commodore, bash your way through until we can get air support to you.
With more U-boats converging, Lieutenant Commander Luther's escorts will have to fight for themselves. 38 U-boats from the Stürmer and Dränger Gruppes surround the two convoys. Risking the daylight of March 17th, they continue to pick off merchant ships one by one.
The size of this battle is quite extraordinary. I mean, well over 100 assets involved on both sides, escorts, merchant ships, U-boats. Over 50 U-boats were actually deployed by Dönitz in this, of which 40 made contact. This is an absolutely extraordinary scale of battle.
But as the day goes on, the weather improves, allowing the Allied corvettes and destroyers to go on the offensive, to locate and attack U-boats. Their most effective weapons are depth charges, underwater bombs, designed especially to sink submarines. They can be set to explode at different depths to create a sandwich effect of explosions above and below the U-boat.
What destroys the sub is the overpressure. So you're not blowing it up in the sense that you strike it with a shell and the shell penetrates and detonates it. You just need to squeeze it.
On his first patrol, Captain Lieutenant Kurt Lange commands U-530. He has just located HX.229 and transmits his sighting report.
Frachter, Backbord voraus!
When he submerges to avoid being spotted, the destroyer HMS Beverly
New contact.
picks him up on her Aztec and charges. U-530 crash dives to evade an attack. Beverly's sonar continues to ping off the U-boat. Guided into position by the contacts, HMS Beverly drops its depth charges overboard.
It's quite hard for the commanding officer to keep his crew calm, and everybody is only supposed to wait and to hope, because they can't do anything.
Outer structures are damaged in the blasts and begin to fill with water. The added weight drags the U-boat down. boat sinks to nearly 800 feet.
Everybody is under stress. You have a lot of adrenaline in yourself and you can't get rid of your adrenaline. You can't move.
Water swirling in around their feet. Boat creaking under pressure. Captain Lieutenant Lange and his crew hear the destroyer directly overhead.
He had to realize that now he is in the position of the prey and he is depending on luck because he can't do anything against the escorts.
The thing about submarines is there are not a lot of wounded. If the sub goes down, everybody goes with it. Nobody's walking home.
But it's U-530's lucky day. HMS Beverly loses contact with the U-boat. When the seas fall silent, the crew jumps into action. Carefully managing their remaining battery power, they ascend in 30-foot intervals.
He has to conserve his battery fuel because he needs it for propulsion. Otherwise, the submarine would sink deeper and deeper.
After the 2-hour attack, Lange's crippled U-boat breaks the surface. Their ordeal is over. They are fortunate to be alive. Additional Allied attacks throughout the day of March 17th forced 12 German U-boats to lose contact with the convoy.
What you're trying to do as the escort commander is to break contact. It's a bonus if you can attack it. It's even better if you can sink it.
Gradually, the scales tip in the Allies' favor. Although U-boats continue to pick away, the two convoys approach the edge of the air gap. Allied aircraft can reach the convoys from Europe. The Wolfpacks are now also being hunted from the sky. Long-range air patrols, Liberators, Sunderlands, and Fortresses provide cover from the convoy, relieving pressure off the exhausted escorts.
Like the cavalry coming over the hill, the arrival of Coastal Command aircraft alters the situation very significantly. Aircraft can force submarines down. Once submarines are submerged, their mobility is greatly reduced.
A 206 Squadron Flying Fortress flies into a squall astern of the convoy, hoping to catch a U-boat unaware. U-384 doesn't have a chance to dive before 4 depth charges are dropped. Explosions are spotted on either side of the U-boat. U-384 sinks to the ocean floor, taking with it the crew of 47. The Nazis' lethal weapon has become their iron coffin.
Now the convoy is under the air umbrella, which can be quite aggressive. So the sensible thing to do is to withdraw the U-boats so that they can go back into the gaps and find another convoy without air cover.
Dönitz finally calls off the attack. HX.229 and SC.122 have endured a 3-day assault, suffering a record amount of destruction. Between the two convoys, 22 ships, totaling more than 146,000 tons, has been destroyed. On the remaining vessels, 11 carried more than 1,100 survivors between them. During the U-boat attacks of March 1943, Dönitz's Wolfpack strategy works perfectly. The successful operations provide reason to believe Germany is on the brink of winning the war for the Atlantic.
For the first 3 weeks in March of 1943, 100% of the convoys crossing the North Atlantic were intercepted. Over 50% of them were actually attacked by U-boats.
But at the end of March, circumstances shift again.
The resources are on the horizon, and so is better weather, and it all changes almost in a heartbeat at the end of March.
Longer spring days, better technology, and more airplanes allow the Allies to close the air gap.
When air power becomes really oppressive in the spring of '43, when the North Atlantic air gap disappears because of small aircraft carriers, 4-engine aircraft, all radar equipped, there's no place left for Dönitz to go. He has to quit at the end of May because he has literally nothing left. The Germans go from near victory, whatever that might have been, to catastrophic defeat in about 8 weeks.
The battle against the convoys SC.122 and HX.229 is a minor battle in the context of the whole war, but it marks the shift of the Battle of the Atlantic.
But increased air cover is not the only reason German U-boats meet tougher times.
The key to the Wolfpack tactics was radio control, centralized radio control from BDU. The problem was it gave away the position of the submarines, and so it contained the seeds of its own destruction.
The Allies regain their intelligence edge, the weather improves, and the air gap disappears. The Nazis have nowhere left to hide. In May, Admiral Dönitz orders his U-boats out of the North Atlantic. The Wolfpacks would never again come as close to cutting off the Allies as they did during the long, dark nights of March 1943.